Okay, thank you, Dominique. And I also would like to thank the organizing committee of this conference. In my presentation, I'm going to talk about the question of acoustic music transcription. This topic is a part of my research for about 20 years. And I'm going to speak about history, theory, methods, technologies I developed, and perspectives that can be applied to many areas of musicology. In 1970, Jacques Vidal and François Delalande realized the first animated transcription of concrete music. I need to switch for the audio.
The switch where the audio is going. It's going to the HDMI, which is it's going from the headphone jack.
Yes. However, studying music created without images through transcription or visualization can seem paradoxical. Indeed, in 2006, the French musicologist Vincent Tiffon wrote, "The sonogram allows the visual transfer of sounds and music that are precisely designed outside this visual context." At the heart of this paradox, the contradiction resides between acoustic music and an anti-acoustic analysis method. Listening to the spectrum changes the pure acoustic character of this music. However, 56 years earlier, Pierre Schaeffer wrote, "Some complete music works immediately demand the graphic translation, and it would not be impossible, for example, to compose a concrete music by expressing the equivalence of matter and form of an abstract painting. In any case, this painting would be a better score than notes on music staff paper. Thus, there is an undisputable link between these two new phenomena, which establish a solid bridge between painting and music." The French composer and researcher Gaël Tissot adds that there has often been a convergence between the morphological work of the composer and the notion of plasticity stemming from the visual field, while going beyond the scope of the Groupe de Recherche Image. The Groupe de Recherche Image was one of the 4 research groups created by Pierre Schaeffer in the Service de la Recherche. The 3 others were the Groupe de Recherche Musicale, the GRM, the Groupe de Recherche Technologique, and the Groupe d'études critiques. During my research, I developed an analytical framework which contains 3 main steps. The first step consists in creating one or more representations from the digital signal, waveform, spectrum, or representation from audio descriptors. This is the acoustical analysis step. During the second step, the researcher segments musical material in temporal and spectral dimensions with or without precise boundaries. This segmentation can be made by identifying the origin of sounds, by segmenting the musical flow into morphologies based on an analytical of the acoustic parameters of sound, by identifying the musical functions of musical discourse, or by identifying elements of structures ranging from large temporal division, the form, the musical form, to the most finely divided, the microstructure. And the third step is the transcription of the musical representation. Drawing on Bertin's work, the French researcher in architecture Cécile Regnault has proposed a table of correspondence between the visual parameters of annotations and Schefferian sound object criteria. This table lists a set of common uses which began to spread in the early 2000s. I have experimented different correspondence in my representations. For instance, on the morphology of shapes and the morphology of sounds, or the color of shapes and the origin of sounds. In this transcription of an extract of De Natura Sonorum by Bernard Parmigiani, I drew shapes to represent the approximate pitch in vertical dimension, the origin of sound in colors. Each color represents the matter of the object used to create the sound. For example, blue for water, brown for double bass, yellow for fire, etc. And the amplitude curve with the morphology of shape. In addition, this transcription was made for the CD-ROM La Musique Electroacoustic, published by the Groupe de Recherche Musicale in 2000. This CD-ROM was commissioned by the French Ministry of Education. Then I also created this transcription to be attractive and easily understandable by children. The transcription space is a frame will contain one or more backgrounds and graphic annotations. This space contains several dimensions organized into 4 categories. The graphical plane, the horizontal axis always represents times, and the vertical axis can represent approximate pitches or panoramic position or any other dimensions. The background contains a plain color or a representation of sound. In this case, it is always better to draw representation of sound below the annotations without superposition. The annotations, of course, and the other analytical parameters like diagram of audio descriptors, text, etc. To illustrate the vertical axis, in my transcription of Dulcinée by Alain Sabouret, realized for the same CD-ROM La Musique Electroacoustic, I used the vertical axis to represent panoramic positions of sound. In October 2010, Simon Emerson, Lee Landy, Mike Gate, and myself began the new multimedia tools for electroacoustic music analysis research project at the Music Technology and Innovation Research Center at Leicester's De Montfort University. As part of this project, I developed the e-analysis software to gather the essential tools for the analysis, representation, and transcription of non-written music. E-analysis is a sort of workspace where the user can create representations, import data from other software, or recording viewing performance, analyze them, and export to different formats. We had 3 goals. The first is to develop a software for different users, musicians, composers, researchers, but also teachers, students, or even children. For example, to do this, we added analytical annotation from the main theories used in electroacoustic analysis, or the possibility to create annotation through drawing during the playback on the whiteboard for children. The second goal was to go beyond the limits of other software. For example, working with movie files, create map of sound work, or use a still sheet to change a graphical parameter of a transcription immediately. The third goal was to experiment new types of representation or to import representations from other fields like acoustics, physics, mathematics, etc. Indeed, e-analysis was a great laboratory for my research. Here is an example of experimentation with OMAX software developed by the music representations team of IRCAM. OMAX is a software environment which learns in real time typical features of a musician's styles and plays along with him interactively. OMAX, in this representation, OMAX on display an arc diagram representation of its improvisation. These arcs link similar patterns. I use it to create automated representation of structure and compare it to François Bell's transcriptions. As you can see, there are a lot of points of convergence. I also experimented with transcription at the borderline of graphic art to access the point when foreground and background exchange their roles. Usually the background is used as a space which represents the space of time and frequency. The shapes drawn on this background stand out and are represented by units segmented during the analysis. The transcription I have made of heterozygote and the Luc Ferry's series of Prescurien tends to attenuate the separation between form, the foreground, and the background. The background becomes a part of the form or guides a non-linear temporal navigation, and the forms no longer stand out in the background. The transcription usually done on at least two planes is rendered in a single plane. These transcriptions also provided an opportunity to experience the minimum elements to be included in a representation. I developed the main feature of e-analysis in my article. Now I am going to introduce the perspectives that are very close to some of our topic conference. Some part of e-analysis are based on one of my other software, e-analysis. Over several years, around 2006, I developed this piece of software, which was a presentation application for musicians. It contains slides and graphic shapes, much like PowerPoint, but each of them could be synchronized to an audiovisual file. E-analysis was perfectly adapted to the presentation of written music. The user could annotate the score, create playback to help buffering of the score, and create simple animations for musicologists or teachers. Since 2015, I started a new research project with the French musical company MilieuX to analyze acoustic music performance. You can find different software on my website. These software are developed in Max environments. And 2 years ago, I decided to merge these three projects in one new software, eAnalyse 5. eAnalyse 5 will contain a lot of new exciting features for musicians, researchers, teachers, etc. The final goal is to cover all analytical steps of a musical study, from performance recording to preparation of representation for publication. And this software will be available in this form. Just some preview of this software. For example, you will be able to import MIDI, music XML, and MilieuX and to create a piano roll system, to link to sound file, or to research some pitch, duration, etc. In the same way, the software import Pro Tools information session, repair file, or Antascofo scores. Then the users will be able to annotate source code of Antascofo scores and create different kinds of representations from this notation. Let's wait 1 minute, 2 minutes. Okay. Then just one final example of this software. Last example. This example was made by Jeanne Ramon-Gonour. Jeanne Ramon-Gonour, in her PhD, she analyzed understanding music with eAnalyse and eAnalysis. But this kind of representation is very complex to realize. And in the new eAnalyse 5 version, I add new features like these features to directly import Pratt, for example, Pratt pitch contour to create different kind of representations. Okay, thank you.
So we have time for a few questions.
Maybe I misunderstood something. The Luc Ferrari example that you showed. Almost everything that we heard was not in the score or in the representation. So what is about the threshold that makes it so interesting at that point?
The representation in this score, it's not really a score, it's a representation of structure and the different part of the sound. There are 3 types of sound. A mix, 3 layers of sounds. And I represent these 3 layers here, and the evolution of dynamic for 1 layer on the center, the graph in the center. It's not precisely exact sound for each element.
Thank you, Pierre. So I really like what you showed on croisé. I mean, your representation or your transcription is somewhat accurate. I mean, we quite read. It's quite a score. It's almost a score on which we can read. So my question was, do you think that one day it could be possible to eAnalysis or with another software to go to not to automatic annotations, but at least to have some technological help, for example, to define a pattern, and here it will be, of course, an acoustic pattern and a noise, and say, okay, find me the pattern and perhaps help me to draw, help me to do my transcription.
It exists a different project like this. Maybe you can see the research of Christian Spivak. Christian Spivak worked on sort of plugin in acousmograph to segment, to create automatic segmentation and to find sound. It's a system from neural network. It was for maybe 10 years, I don't remember exactly. And you have also a very good PhD by Christian Guillemot. And it was also a project with GRM to create. It was not an automatic segmentation, but it was an interactive segmentation. The system proposed a first segmentation, and the user can adjust, and the system will compute another segmentation. And there are also other work on automatic transcription of electroacoustic music, but it didn't really work because the sounds are very complex, and even if you use audio descriptors or other technologies, it's very complex to identify a sound and the different iterations of the same sound.
So let's thank Pierre again.